July 6, 2024, 1 a.m. in Springfield, a peaceful city in the state of Illinois. Everything seemed to be immersed in a quiet summer sleep, until the 911 operator received a call. A trembling voice rang out in the dark night.
It sounds like somebody was banging on the side of my house. I don't know. Oh, could y'all come and see?
In less than 10 minutes, the police car arrived. An officer's body camera began recording everything. The door opened. A flashlight scanned every corner of the room. There was no screaming, no weapons, no pursuit. Just a woman waiting for help. But just a few minutes later, everything was reversed. A split-second decision and a life gone forever. No one could have expected that. The person who called 911 for protection would not live to tell what happened. Today, we're going back in time to hear what really happened that night, through the police's own cameras, through testimony, and through the anguished voices of those who were left behind. This is not just a case, but a poignant reminder of something that modern society still can't fully answer. When you cry for help, are you really safe? Sonya Massey is a 36-year-old woman who lives in a quiet neighborhood in Springfield, Illinois, where people greet each other as they pass by, where children play in the yard in the late afternoon. Sonya is a mother of two. She lives a simple life, unremarkable to the world, but the whole world to her children. Neighbors describe her as a gentle, introverted person who loves her family and always behaves properly. With a stable job at a local office, Sonya is not a person who speaks up often, but she is brave enough to protect what is important to her. Her small house is located on South Hoover Avenue, not far from the city center, but quiet enough to hear the sound of cars passing by every night. However, recently, Sonya has begun to feel worried. She had told her family that there were strangers around the area, strange noises at night that kept her awake. It was not an irrational fear, but the vigilance of a single mother who had learned to be on guard. And then one night in early July, in the very house where she had read bedtime stories to her children, Sonya did what anyone in that situation would do. She called for help, but no one, including her, knew that the call would be the last time anyone would hear her voice. July 5th, 2024. A normal Friday in the middle of summer. Sonya Massey spent most of the day at home with her two young children. She didn't go far, just stopped by a nearby store to pick up a few essentials. According to the neighborhood security camera, around 4 p.m., she showed up at the grocery store around the corner, paid quickly, and then returned. She didn't show any signs of anything unusual, no anxiety, no rush. Everything was normal. But according to her close friend that evening, Sonya sent a somewhat worrying text message. "Someone is hanging around our house tonight. If you don't hear from them tomorrow, call the police." Around 1 a.m. on July 6th, while the two children were fast asleep in the next room, Sonya suddenly heard a noise coming from the back of the house. She looked out the window and saw a strange figure circling the backyard, or so she believed. Without hesitation, Sonya picked up the phone and dialed 911. Her voice was broken, shaky but clear. "Someone is hanging around my house. I'm just here with my child." From that moment on, everything she did was instinctively like a mother trying to protect her family. Unfortunately, that call did not lead to the help she expected. When the dispatcher received the emergency call from Sonya Massey at 1:15 a.m. on July 6, 2024, the system immediately dispatched 3 deputies to 2800 South Hoover Avenue, where she reported a break-in. A few minutes later, a patrol car appeared in front of the small house. Deputy Sean Grayson was the first to get out of the car. He was wearing a body camera that was recording the entire incident. Video later showed Grayson approaching the front door. He knocked and shouted, "Police!" with no clear answer. The door appeared to be slightly open. Grayson quickly pushed the door open and entered, his flashlight shining directly into the living room. Sonya Massey was standing in the kitchen area, unarmed, not moving quickly, and her hands were low. According to the 2 officers accompanying her, there was no threatening behavior on her part. However, on Grayson's body camera video, he is heard suddenly shouting,
"Better not, I swear to God, I'll shoot you right in the face."
Okay, I'm sorry.
Drop
Just seconds after that statement, a gunshot rang out. Massey collapsed to the floor. Two deputies walking behind Grayson immediately responded. One called for medical assistance, the other checked Sonya's pulse. No response. The incident occurred less than 2 minutes after police entered the home. Notably, there was no screaming, no struggle or threats of a weapon from Sonya. She was not carrying a knife, no hard object, and there was no sign of resistance on the video. One of the two deputies accompanying her later testified, "There was no reason to shoot her in that situation. She was cooperating, just standing still." Grayson did not immediately give a reason. He was told to leave the scene and hand over his weapon immediately. In the 911 call later released, Sonya is heard repeatedly saying, "I'm just worried about my baby. Please come quickly." But when the person who came was the one who left her speechless, the tragic nature of the case was set in stone from the very first moment. As the bullet left the barrel of Deputy Sean Grayson's gun, the small house on South Hoover Avenue was engulfed in chaos. Sonya Massey collapsed to the kitchen floor. There was silence, as if time had frozen for a few seconds. The two officers who had accompanied Grayson, who had just walked through the door, responded immediately. One rushed toward the victim, checking her pulse. The other radioed for medical help. A woman shot, urgent assistance needed. Sonya's two children were still sleeping soundly in their room at the time. An officer quickly removed them from the scene and placed them in the care of a foster carer. Police cordoned off the area, keeping everyone away, including neighbors and family members who began arriving after hearing sirens wail in the night. Investigators from the Illinois State Police arrived in less than an hour. The house was left untouched, body cameras were recovered from the scene, and the entire neighborhood fell into a state of heavy silence. When the ambulance arrived, paramedics confirmed Sonya Massey had died at the scene from a fatal facial wound. A woman had called the police for protection, but was left lying on the floor of her own home, the safest place to be. An investigation was launched that night, but with what the cameras recorded, the question was no longer who did it, but why did it happen? In the early morning hours of July 6, 2024, forensic investigators and the Illinois State Police crime scene technician conducted a crime scene investigation at Sonya Massey's home. The small house showed no signs of forced entry or ransacking. There was no evidence of an actual intruder, as she had suspected. However, a neighbor's security camera captured a silhouette in the backyard around 1 a.m., the exact time Massey called 911. However, the image was too blurry to identify. In the kitchen where the incident occurred, Sonya was found lying on her back on the floor, her head turned to the side, blood oozing from a wound to her face. There were no sharp objects, knives, or anything that could be considered a weapon found at the scene. Her hands were empty. The autopsy report, released a week later, stated, Massey died from a single bullet that passed through her face, causing severe brain damage. The shooting range was determined to be close, only about 2 to 3 meters. There were no signs of a struggle and no bruises or abrasions on her body other than the gunshot wound. The coroner's conclusion was clear. Sonya Massey's death was a homicide. The physical evidence, combined with the body camera video, raises serious questions about the legality of the shooting and the police's handling of the situation. Immediately after the incident, the Illinois State Police, ISP, was given full authority to investigate in order to ensure transparency and objectivity. The fact that an unarmed citizen was killed in his own home after calling 911 immediately put the entire system under strict supervision. Within 24 hours, the investigation team collected all the body camera videos of the 3 officers present at the scene, including Sean Grayson, who fired the shots. Recording devices from the command center and the 911 call transcript were also analyzed in detail, second by second. The body camera video clearly shows the entire process. From the moment Grayson entered the house, the threat was uttered, to the moment he opened fire. More importantly, the 2 accompanying officers both testified that the victim had not made any threatening actions and was not carrying a weapon. Grayson's personnel file was also quickly reviewed. Documents showed that he had been warned for inappropriate behavior when handling stressful situations. A recording from 2022 also showed that his superiors had doubted Grayson's mental stability at work. Under public pressure, Grayson was suspended the following day. An official arrest warrant was issued within 72 hours. What started as a simple emergency call quickly turned into a state-level criminal investigation of extraordinary severity. Just 3 days after the incident, on July 9, 2024, the Illinois State Police Department issued a formal arrest warrant for Deputy Sean Grayson. Grayson was summoned to the Sangamon County Sheriff's Department to testify. However, after reviewing all the evidence, including body camera video, statements from 2 accompanying officers, and autopsy results, investigators concluded that the shooting was unjustified and a serious violation of professional procedure. At the police station, Grayson was given an arrest warrant, read his Miranda rights, and placed in handcuffs on the scene. The entire process was videotaped and recorded as part of the legal record. He was transferred to the Macon County Jail without bail pending trial. The arrest was quickly reported by local media, with angry reactions from the community. For many, it was the first, albeit belated, step toward justice for an innocent woman who lost her life in her own home. Arrest process. Just 3 days after the incident, on July 9, 2024, the Illinois State Police Department issued a formal arrest warrant for Deputy Sean Grayson. Grayson was summoned to the Sangamon County Sheriff's Department to testify. However, after reviewing all the evidence, including body camera video, statements from 2 accompanying officers, and autopsy results, investigators concluded that the shooting was unjustified and a serious violation of professional procedure. At the police station, Grayson was given an arrest warrant, read his Miranda rights, and placed in handcuffs on the scene. The entire process was videotaped and recorded as part of the legal record. He was transferred to the Macon County Jail without bail pending trial. The arrest was quickly reported by local media, with angry reactions from the community. For many, it was the first, albeit belated, step toward justice for an innocent woman who lost her life in her own home. Soon after his arrest, Sean Grayson was taken into an interrogation room at the Macon County Detention Center. The interview was conducted by 2 senior investigators from the Illinois State Police. All statements were videotaped and recorded. Grayson initially appeared calm and cooperative. He said he felt the situation was out of control when he entered the home, and that the victim may have been hiding something dangerous. However, when asked to identify the specific threat or actions that made him feel threatened, Grayson could not provide clear evidence. An investigator asked directly, "Did she have a weapon?" Grayson replied after a pause, "No, but I warned her. I saw her looking at me strangely." The crux of Grayson's account is that in the body camera video, there is no indication that Massey approached or became aggressive. She simply stood still, silent, and did not resist. The testimony of the 2 deputies who accompanied Grayson further undermined Grayson's position. They confirmed that they did not hear any threats from Massey, and that Grayson's actions in drawing his gun happened too quickly, without any apparent warning. The interrogation ended after nearly 2 hours. Although Grayson did not admit to wrongdoing, what he said, and did not say, reinforced the idea that the decision to shoot was based on complacency, not on real danger. After completing the questioning process, investigators compiled all the evidence to move to the criminal prosecution stage. The case file was quickly strengthened with many elements of legal weight. First, there was the body camera video, undeniable visual evidence, recording all of Grayson's threatening and shooting behavior. Second, the 911 call transcript showed Sonya Massey in a completely distressed state, without any signs of aggression or instability. In addition, the testimony of 2 colleagues present at the scene was considered a key factor. They confirmed that the victim did not resist, was not carrying a weapon, and was fully cooperative when the police arrived. Finally, the autopsy report reinforced the conclusion that the victim was shot at close range, without signs of self-defense, and that the gunshot wound caused almost instantaneous death. With sufficient physical evidence, witnesses, and forensics, the case against Sean Grayson was completed and transferred to the Illinois State Attorney's Office for prosecution, with charges of first-degree murder and misconduct in office. The trial of Sean Grayson officially began on October 20th, 2025, in Peoria County District Court, Illinois. It is one of those cases that has garnered a great deal of media and public attention, not only because of its seriousness, but also because it raises profound questions about the responsibilities and powers of law enforcement. Grayson faces 3 charges: first-degree murder, aggravated assault with a weapon, and official misconduct in the line of duty. At trial, prosecutors presented a compelling line of evidence: body camera video, 911 recordings, testimony from 2 fellow officers, and forensic findings. They argued that Grayson failed to follow procedures to control the situation, and that his shooting was unjustified, uncontrolled, and resulted in the irreversible death of an innocent person. The defense tried to build the argument that Grayson felt threatened and acted under pressure. However, there was no concrete evidence to prove that the victim posed a danger. After nearly 2 weeks of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict: guilty on all counts. Grayson was sentenced to 40 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 25 years. In the courtroom, Sonya Massey's family members held hands and quietly shed tears, not out of joy, but because justice had finally been served. After the trial ended, Sonya Massey's family returned to the house where it all began, but she was no longer there. The 2 young children who had been held close to their mother's chest every night were now growing up with a void that could not be filled. Relatives tried to keep smiling when talking about her, but there was always something in their eyes that could not be put into words. Perhaps regret, perhaps anger, or simply a question: why? Sonya Massey's case was more than a personal tragedy. It became a sobering reminder to society that sometimes when power is given to those who are not willing to take responsibility, the only thing left is the consequences. She did nothing wrong. She did everything right, called the police, stayed calm, stood still. But her death shows that being right is not enough to survive. We cannot turn back the clock and change what has happened, but we can choose how we respond, with awareness, with real reform, and with a commitment that every call for help must be answered with responsibility, not fear or prejudice. Sonya Massey is no more, but her name and the questions she left behind resonate, and the responsibility lies with all of us who remain.